But let's begin with Grease, which is nothing more nor less than a very old-fashioned Hollywood musical, and a very badly made one at that.
You think you know Grease. You've sung along to Summer Nights. You've quoted, "Tell me about it, stud," and you probably owned the soundtrack at some point in your life. But what if everything you thought you knew about this iconic film was hiding secrets that could have destroyed it before anyone ever heard "You're the One That I Want"? Behind the poodle skirts and leather jackets, secret affairs threatened to shut down filming. Budget fraud nearly bankrupted the studio. The lead plan. The cast and crew have finally started revealing what really happened during those chaotic months in 1977. The truth is, these revelations will make you see the film differently. Others will make you wonder how it got made at all. Are you ready to discover what most fans never figured out about the biggest musical of all time? Let's go behind the scenes of Rydell High and expose the scandals, fights, and last-minute miracles that created a cultural phenomenon. The age scandal. High school students, played by middle-aged adults. On-screen teachers. Eve Arden, who played Principal McGee, was only 48, just 18 years older than the woman playing a student. Does an 18-year age gap make sense for a teacher-student relationship? And Newton-John wasn't alone in this age deception. Stockard Channing, who delivered that razor-sharp performance as Bad Girl Rizzo, was 33 years old playing a pregnant teen. 33. That's the same age many people are when they're actually having their own teenage children. Why did this happen? Paramount Pictures made a calculated decision. They wanted established stars who could actually sing and dance, not authentic teenagers who might look right but couldn't carry a musical number. The studio was gambling tens of millions of dollars on this production. They weren't about to risk it on unknown kids just because they looked age-appropriate. But Newton-John knew the age issue was problematic. She rejected the role 3 times specifically because she felt too old to play a high school student. Can you imagine how different film history would be if she'd stuck to that decision? Director Randall Kleiser had to promise her something extraordinary to change her mind. He guaranteed he'd use soft lighting and strategic camera angles to make her appear younger. The production actually employed a full-time makeup artist, whose sole job was making Newton-John look teenage. They used specific foundations to smooth her skin, carefully lit every scene to hide any age lines, and positioned cameras at flattering angles. Here's the detail that almost exposed everything. Newton-John couldn't do certain physical stunts because insurance companies refused to cover a 30-year-old doing teenager athletics. Her cheerleading scenes? That's not actually her. Production used a body double who was genuinely 17 years old. Every time you see those cheerleading shots, you're watching someone young enough to actually be in high school. The question becomes, did the age deception matter? Test audiences never complained. Critics didn't mention it. And decades later, Grease remains beloved despite everyone now knowing that Rydell High was populated by actors old enough to be experiencing their own midlife crises. The casting rejection that changed everything. Here's something that will blow your mind. John Travolta was nobody's first choice to play Danny Zuko. In fact, he wasn't even the second or third choice. The role that became his signature performance was offered to multiple actors who turned it down, thinking it would be career suicide. Henry Winkler, yes, the Fonz himself, was Paramount's dream casting for Danny. It made perfect sense. Winkler was dominating television as the coolest greaser in America on Happy Days.
One time only. Line right up here, kiss the Fonz for $1. Now that's a bargain at any price.
He had name recognition, teen appeal, and the leather jacket already broken in. The studio assumed he'd jump at the chance to bring that persona to the big screen. Winkler said no. He specifically turned it down because he didn't want to be typecast as another greaser character. He wanted to expand beyond the Fonz, not reinforce that image. Years later, Winkler admitted it was the worst career decision I ever made. Imagine living with that knowledge, knowing you turned down one of the most iconic roles in film history because you were trying to avoid typecasting. But Winkler wasn't the only rejection. Paramount then pursued Treat Williams, who declined to do a Broadway show instead. They offered it to Perry King, who passed for another film role. Multiple actors looked at Danny Zuko and saw a dead-end part in a risky musical adaptation that might destroy their careers. So how did John Travolta force his way into a role nobody wanted him for. Through contractual leverage and perfect timing, Travolta was under contract with producer Robert Stigwood, who had a development deal with Paramount. Stigwood leveraged his relationship with the studio to push Travolta for the role, despite executives thinking he was too soft, too pretty, not tough enough for Danny Zuko. But Travolta had just finished Saturday Night Fever, and he was box office gold. That gave Stigwood negotiating power the studio couldn't ignore. Here's the condition Paramount demanded before approving the casting. Travolta had to prove he could sing live, not just lip-sync like he did in Saturday Night Fever. The studio required him to perform 3 songs live for executives before they'd sign off. Travolta sang Sandy, Greased Lightning, and We Go Together in a Paramount boardroom for 12 executives. His voice cracked twice during Sandy, but his star power and charisma won them over. Sandy, can't you see? The role that 3 actors rejected because they thought it was beneath them became Travolta's signature performance and one of the most iconic characters in musical cinema. Think about the alternate universe where Henry Winkler said, yes. Would Grease have been better? Different? Would it have become the phenomenon it did? We'll never know. But the fact that Travolta wasn't wanted makes his triumph even more satisfying. The secret affair that nearly destroyed production. Now we get into the messy personal drama that almost shut down filming entirely. Stockard Channing and Jeff Conaway, Rizzo and Kenicky on screen, began a secret, volatile affair during the second week of filming. This wasn't some sweet, behind-the-scenes romance. This was an intense, destructive relationship that created chaos on set and nearly derailed the entire production. Here's the complicating factor. Jeff Conaway was married at the time. His affair with Channing wasn't just unprofessional, it was scandalous. And unlike most Hollywood indiscretions that stay hidden, this one was obvious to everyone because Channing and Conaway couldn't control themselves around each other. Cast members described witnessing screaming fights in trailers, followed by passionate reconciliations. The emotional chaos wasn't contained to their personal time, it bled directly into their performances. When Rizzo and Keniski's relationship had conflict in the script, Channing and Conaway's real arguments made scenes uncomfortably authentic. Director Randall Kleiser later admitted he had no idea if certain emotional moments were acting or genuine fighting. That raw intensity you see when Rizzo lashes out at Kenicky, when she's vulnerable and defensive and hurt, that wasn't entirely scripted. Those were real emotions from a complicated affair playing out in front of cameras. But here's where the situation became a production crisis. Conaway's wife discovered the affair halfway through filming, and she didn't just confront him privately, she showed up on set, demanding a face-to-face confrontation. Production shut down for an entire day while Conaway dealt with his imploding marriage. Paramount executives considered firing both actors, but they'd already filmed too much footage to recast. They were trapped. Either they found a way to manage this disaster, or they lost millions of dollars in completed work. The solution was unprecedented. Paramount hired a relationship counselor to be on set specifically to manage Channing and Conaway's drama. This person had no official title and was paid off the books to prevent union complications. Their job was literally mediating between actors so they could complete scenes together without destroying each other or the production. Think about how insane that is. A major studio production grinding to a halt because 2 actors couldn't manage their personal lives. But here's the silver lining. Cast members later revealed the affair made the "there are worse things I could do" scene devastatingly real.
There are worse things I could do.
When Channing sings about complicated feelings, about being judged for her choices, about vulnerability and defiance, those aren't just lyrics. She's singing about genuine emotions for a man standing nearby who she's in a messy relationship with. The affair ended when filming wrapped. Both refused to do publicity together, and for years afterward, they didn't speak. The on-screen relationship that felt so authentic was built on real passion, real conflict, and real heartbreak. The iconic car that was completely illegal. Let's talk about Greased Lightning, not the song, but the actual car. That beautiful customized 1948 Ford Deluxe convertible that represents teenage dreams of freedom and rebellion, it was so heavily modified that it violated California vehicle codes in 17 different ways and couldn't legally be driven on public streets. The modifications made for the film destroyed the car's structural integrity and safety features. Here's the breakdown of violations. The custom paint job used lead-based materials banned by environmental regulations. The raised suspension exceeded height limits. The engine modifications violated emission standards, and the interior removal eliminated required safety equipment. Production actually built 3 separate grease lightning cars. One was pristine and gorgeous but completely non-functional. It was just for close-ups and glamour shots. Another barely ran but could be driven for filming. And the third was essentially a shell mounted on a crane rig for the flying finale. But here's the problem nobody anticipated. After filming, Paramount wanted to use the cars for promotional tours. The California Highway Patrol impounded the driving car during its first promotional appearance because it failed basic safety inspection. The studio had to pay a $12,000 fine and install modern safety equipment just to get the car released. The irony is perfect. The car that symbolizes teenage freedom and rebellion in the movie spent most of its post-filming existence locked in storage to avoid legal problems. The few times it appeared publicly required special permits and police escorts. This is the car that Danny and the T-Birds lovingly restore, that represents their dreams and aspirations, that literally flies at the end of the movie. And in reality, it was such a Frankenstein creation that law enforcement considered it a hazard. The costume that caused actual physical pain. You know the moment. Olivia Newton-John strutting out in those skin-tight black leather pants, transforming from Sweet Sandy to Bad Girl Sandy while singing, "You're the one that I want." It's one of the most iconic costume moments in film history. What you don't know is that those pants were literal torture devices. The iconic black leather pants were so tight that costume designer Albert Walski had to sew Newton-John into them before each take. She couldn't sit, couldn't bend, couldn't use the bathroom while wearing them. Think about that. She was sewn into pants so restrictive that basic human functions became impossible. Here's the preparation process. Each morning of finale filming, Newton-John would lie flat on a table while Wolski and 2 assistants pulled the pants up using pliers on the zipper. The process took approximately 45 minutes and was so painful that Newton-John required pain medication afterward. Once in the pants, she remained standing between takes for up to 6 hours. Production had to schedule frequent short breaks because she physically couldn't maintain the position longer. But the real medical danger wasn't discomfort. It was circulation. The pants were so tight they restricted blood flow to her legs. After the first full day of filming, Newton-John's legs were swollen and discolored. The on-set medic warned that continued wear risked blood clots, a potentially fatal condition. Paramount's insurance company mandated that Newton-John could wear the pants for no more than 90 minutes at a time, with mandatory 30-minute breaks for circulation. That's a medical requirement, not a comfort preference. The pants were genuinely dangerous. Here's the solution that made filming possible. Production created a custom standing apparatus that supported Newton-John's weight without requiring her to use leg muscles. It was essentially a hidden standing harness. Between takes, she would lean against this support structure while remaining in costume, unable to sit or move freely. Newton-John later revealed she still has nerve damage in her legs from those pants. The iconic image that represents Sandy's transformation came at the cost of permanent physical injury. Every time you watch that scene, you're witnessing someone in genuine pain, working through it to deliver a performance that would define her career. Was it worth it? Newton-John has said yes. The moment was too important to compromise. But the fact that an iconic costume required medical monitoring tells you everything about the sometimes brutal reality of creating movie magic. The rating battle that almost killed the film. Here's something most fans never knew. Grease was originally rated R by the Motion Picture Association of America. An R rating. That would have banned the teenage target audience from seeing it without parental accompaniment, destroying the film's box office potential. The MPAA's problem was the Rizzo pregnancy subplot. They considered it inappropriate sexual content for teenagers, specifically the frank discussion of pregnancy, the implications of sexual activity, and the casual way characters handled what the MPAA deemed serious moral issues. Paramount fought the rating for 3 months. The studio argued the pregnancy scare had a moral message about consequences. The MPAA disagreed, claiming the film glamorized teenage sexuality without sufficient negative consequences, since Rizzo wasn't actually pregnant. In their view, the subplot suggested teens could have sex without real ramifications. Here's the compromise that saved the PG rating. Director Randall Kleiser had to cut 4 specific scenes. First, a longer conversation where Rizzo explicitly discusses missing her period. Second, a scene where she researches abortion options. Third, dialogue where Kaneki suggests they take care of it, a clear abortion reference. And fourth, a scene showing Rizzo at a clinic. These deleted scenes totaled approximately 11 minutes of footage that the MPAA deemed too mature for a PG rating. They would have added significant depth to Rizzo's character and made her subplot more realistic and challenging. But they had to go. Here's what Kleiser fought to keep. There are worse things I could do. The dance marathon that almost killed the cast. The school dance sequence, including the hand jive competition, is one of Grease's most celebrated moments. The energy, the choreography, the period-perfect atmosphere. It looks effortless and joyful. The reality was a 19-day nightmare that nearly killed the production and hospitalized multiple performers. 19 consecutive days of filming for one sequence. That's not normal. Most complex scenes take 3 to 5 days maximum, but the dance required 178 dancers, each needing costume, makeup, and choreography coordination. Patricia Birch's hand jive choreography was so complex that dancers needed 12 full days of rehearsal before filming even began. Here's where production became dangerous. The gym set, built on a Paramount soundstage, had no air conditioning. The lights required for filming raised temperatures to over 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Dancers were collapsing from heat exhaustion regularly. The production medic treated 47 cases of dehydration and heat-related illness during the 19-day shoot. That's not normal wear and tear. That's a medical crisis happening in real time while cameras rolled. The schedule was brutal. Filming ran from 6 a.m. to midnight daily. Dancers worked 6-hour shifts in rotation because nobody could physically sustain longer periods in that heat. Production went through over 2,000 bottles of water and 300 pounds of ice daily, just trying to keep people hydrated. But here's the moment that almost shut everything down. On day 14, a dancer suffered heat stroke and collapsed unconscious. The soundstage was evacuated, and filming suspended for 2 days while Paramount installed temporary cooling systems. The incident nearly triggered a Screen Actors Guild investigation into unsafe working conditions. Think about that. A major studio production creating conditions so dangerous that performers were dropping unconscious. And this wasn't for an action sequence or dangerous stunt. It was for a dance number. The joyful energy you see on screen came from performers working in conditions that would be illegal today. The authentic teenage excitement visible in those scenes was dancers desperately trying to complete takes before heat, exhaustion, forced another medical emergency. The song that was cut and then saved by audiences. Director Randall Kleiser originally cut Sandy from the film. That's right, Danny's emotional solo, one of the most iconic moments in the movie, was on the cutting room floor. Kleiser believed it slowed down the film's momentum and didn't advance the plot. The version of Grease that first screened for Paramount executives in December 1977 contained no Sandy performance. Kleiser's cut went straight from the diner confrontation to the drive-in scene, eliminating Danny's vulnerable moment entirely. But test audiences noticed something missing. 3 separate test screenings in different cities produced consistent feedback. Where is Danny's solo song? Viewers expected Danny to have an emotional moment matching Sandy's vulnerability. The absence felt like a missing piece, a film out of balance. Paramount executives were split. Half wanted the song included, half supported Kleiser's faster pace. So they ran a test, 2 versions shown to a 4th test audience, one with Sandy, one without. The version including the song tested 23% higher overall. Female audiences rated it 31% higher. The data was overwhelming. Paramount ordered the song reinstated regardless of cost. But reinstating a cut musical number isn't simple. Kleiser needed 3 additional weeks of editing time and approximately $70,000 for sound mixing and music recording. John Travolta had to return for additional recording sessions to improve audio quality. The song the director wanted to cut became one of Grease's most beloved moments and a Billboard Hot 100 hit. Kleiser's artistic instinct was wrong, and test audiences saved one of the film's defining scenes. Sometimes creators don't know what they have. The flying car ending nobody wanted. That surreal moment when greased lightning lifts off the ground and flies into the clouds while Danny and Sandy wave goodbye. That wasn't in the original script. In fact, it was a desperate last-minute addition to fix an ending that test audiences absolutely hated. The original finale had Danny and Sandy simply driving away in greased lightning after the carnival, waving goodbye to friends. That's it. No flying, no magic. Just 2 kids driving off into their future. Test audiences called it anticlimactic and boring after the high-energy musical numbers. Paramount executives panicked. They'd spent $6 million and needed a hit. The ending was falling flat, and they had 3 weeks before the locked release date. Director Randall Kleiser proposed the flying car as a fantastical conclusion that would leave audiences with a memorable image. Producer Alan Carr thought it was ridiculous but had no better ideas. They had minimal budget for additional effects and almost no time. Here's how they pulled it off. Production rented a crane and rigged greased lightning to ascend slowly while filming against a sky backdrop. The visual effects team at Modern Film Effects created traveling matte shots to make it appear the car was flying higher. The entire sequence cost $47,000 and was completed in 6 days. The crew was split. Half thought the flying car was brilliant surrealism. The other half thought it was nonsensical and ruined the film's reality. Randall Kleiser himself later admitted he wasn't sure if it worked or was too weird. Test audiences loved it, rating the new ending 38% higher than the original. The flying car that was a last-minute desperate addition became Grease's signature image and most debated moment. Film critics still argue whether it's brilliant or absurd. Some see it as a perfect metaphor for young love transcending reality. Others consider it a tonal miscalculation that breaks the film's grounded world. But everyone remembers it, and that's what matters. The ending that almost didn't happen became the image everyone associates with Grease. Sometimes panic creates genius. The perfectionist who nearly bankrupted the budget. Olivia Newton-John was so dissatisfied with her recorded vocals that she demanded to re-record virtually every song multiple times. She redid Hopelessly Devoted to You 17 times before accepting the final version. 17 complete recordings of the same song. The production's music budget tripled from the original estimate because of Newton-John's perfectionism. Here's the specific problem. Newton-John had trained as a country pop singer with a softer vocal style. She believed her voice sounded wrong for rock and roll musical numbers and was convinced audiences would reject her performance. Music producer Louis St. Louis spent over 80 hours in the studio with Newton-John trying to achieve vocals she found acceptable. Each re-recording session cost approximately $12,000 in studio time, musicians, and technical crew. Newton-John's 17 takes of Hopelessly Devoted alone cost over $43,000. Paramount executives demanded she accept earlier takes to control costs. Newton-John threatened to quit the film if forced to use vocals she considered substandard. That's the nuclear option, walking away from a production midstream. Here's the compromise that saved everything. The studio agreed to unlimited re-recording sessions for ballads like Hopelessly Devoted and Sandy, but limited her to 5 takes maximum for ensemble numbers, where her voice blended with others. This arrangement cost Paramount an additional $197,000 in music production. The irony is devastating. The vocals Newton-John hated and fought to re-record earned her a Grammy nomination and became some of the most beloved performances in musical cinema history. Her insecurity produced perfection, but at enormous financial cost. The brotherhood that was completely fake. The T-Birds, Danny, Kaniki, Duty, Sonny, and Putzie radiate on-screen brotherhood. They're loyal, supportive, bonded by friendship and shared identity. The chemistry looks authentic. It was completely manufactured. Jeff Conaway, Barry Pearl, Michael Tucci, and Kelly Ward had such intense personality conflicts that they refused to socialize off-camera and frequently got into verbal altercations that nearly became physical. Director Randall Kleiser had to assign separate trailers positioned far apart to prevent confrontations. Here's the root of the conflict. Conaway, who had Broadway experience, looked down on the others as less professional. He openly criticized their acting during scenes, creating resentment. Barry Pearl and Michael Tucci formed an alliance against Conaway, deliberately making mistakes during his close-ups to force retakes. Kelly Ward stayed neutral but later revealed the atmosphere was toxic and exhausting. During the Greased Lightning number, Conaway and Pearl had a shoving match between takes over positioning in the choreography. Kleiser had to halt filming while they cooled down in separate locations. The production hired a mediator, but the tension never resolved. Here's the filming technique Kleiser developed to manage the situation. He shot T-Bird scenes quickly with minimal rehearsal to reduce time they spent together. Group shots were often composites of separately filmed performances edited together. The diner scenes showing T-Bird's bonding were among the last filmed because Kleiser needed to build enough footage first in case relationships completely collapsed. Cast members later admitted they didn't speak to each other for years after filming Wrapped. The on-screen brotherhood that audiences loved was held together by editing magic and professional obligation. Nothing more. The hit song, written in 4 hours. During editing, Randall Kleiser realized the movie was 12 minutes shorter than the contract immediately. Producer Alan Carr called songwriter John Farrar at 11 p.m. on a Thursday and told him they needed a new song by Monday morning. Farrar had 4 days to write, compose, and record a complete musical number. He actually completed it in one frantic overnight session lasting approximately 4 hours. Farrar wrote the lyrics on cocktail napkins in his home studio while simultaneously composing the melody on his piano. He recorded a demo on a cassette tape and delivered it to Paramount the next morning. Executives loved it immediately and approved production. The filming was equally rushed. John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John learned the song over a weekend. Choreographer Patricia Birch had 3 days to create the routine. The carnival finale was extended by shooting the new number in 2 days of additional filming that cost $73,000. Here's the insane success. You're the One That I Want became the best-selling single of 1978, sold over 4 million copies, and spent 9 weeks at #1. The song, written in 4 hours to meet a runtime requirement, became Grease's signature hit and one of the most commercially successful movie songs ever recorded. Think about that. A desperate last-minute addition written on cocktail napkins became more famous than songs that took months to perfect. Sometimes creativity under pressure produces magic that careful planning never could. The Oscar boycott that shocked Hollywood. Stockard Channing received a Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination for playing Rizzo, a rare recognition for a musical performance. But Channing refused to attend the ceremony and publicly stated she found the nomination insulting. Her objection was specific. If the Academy considered Grease worthy of acting recognition, then John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John deserved nominations too. By nominating only her, the Academy was essentially saying the film was good enough for one performer, but dismissing the others. Channing found this condescending toward the musical genre and her fellow cast members. 2 weeks before the ceremony, Channing told an interviewer, "I won't attend to be the Academy's token acknowledgement of a film they otherwise dismissed as lowbrow entertainment." The Academy was furious at the public criticism. Paramount executives begged her to reconsider, fearing her absence would be seen as disrespectful. Industry insiders predicted she'd never receive another nomination. Her agent warned that refusing to attend could damage her career. Channing attended a Broadway show the night of the ceremony instead, making her absence deliberate and visible. She lost the Oscar to Maggie Smith for California Suite. But here's the vindication. Channing's career flourished despite the boycott. She later received Emmy and Tony Awards, proving the Academy's approval wasn't necessary for success. Her principled stand against what she saw as the Academy's dismissal of musicals made her a hero to many in the theater community. The fraud that doubled the budget. Producer Alan Carr secretly authorized expenditures that doubled the film's budget from $3 million to over $6 million, without informing Paramount until filming was nearly complete. Carr believed Grease needed to look more expensive than typical musicals to compete with Star Wars-era spectacle. He commissioned elaborate costume designs costing 3 times the budgeted amount. He demanded custom-built carnival equipment instead of renting existing rides. But here's where it became fraud. Carr created fake budget reports showing costs within the approved $3 million, while actual expenditures were tracked in separate secret accounting. He paid vendors from personal accounts and charged them back through shell companies. The scheme unraveled when Paramount's accounting discovered duplicate invoices. An audit revealed Carr had spent $6.2 million, more than double the approved budget. Paramount threatened to fire Carr, sue him for fraud, and shut down production. Carr argued the film needed the higher budget to succeed. The studio demanded he accept reduced profit participation and surrender creative control over the final cut. The unauthorized spending that nearly destroyed Carr's career helped make Grease look expensive enough to compete with blockbusters. The love story that never happened. John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John fell genuinely in love during production. Both later admitted they had intense romantic feelings for each other, but they never acted on those feelings and never dated. Newton-John was dating dancer Lee Kramer when filming began and felt obligated to honor that commitment. Travolta was involved with actress Diana Hyland, who was 18 years older and battling cancer. Both felt their existing relationships prevented them from exploring what they felt. Cast members described watching them together as painful because their mutual attraction was obvious to everyone. Kleiser later said he didn't need to direct their romantic chemistry because it was completely authentic. During the final week of filming, Travolta and Newton-John had a late-night conversation where they nearly confessed their feelings. Newton-John later revealed she came seconds away from kissing Travolta but pulled back. The next day, Diana Hyland's cancer worsened and Travolta left to be with her. She died weeks later.
Did John know about Diana's diagnosis when they started to date?
By the time Travolta was ready to date again, Newton-John had married Kramer. The chemistry that made Sandy and Danny's romance believable was real. The love story was happening behind the scenes, just never consummated. The box office. Secret nobody remembers. Here's the ultimate revelation. In 1978, Grease earned $396 million worldwide compared to Star Wars' $173 million for that year, making Grease the highest-grossing film of 1978. This fact is rarely discussed because Star Wars' total cumulative gross eventually surpassed Grease. But for 1 year, the musical about high school romance beat the space opera everyone assumed was unbeatable. The film remained in theaters for over a year due to unprecedented demand. It played continuously in some theaters for 18 months. The soundtrack sold over 28 million copies, the best-selling soundtrack album in history until Whitney Houston's The Bodyguard. Grease brought multiple generations to theaters. Teenagers saw it for the music and romance. Their parents saw it for nostalgia. Grandparents brought families for wholesome entertainment. Star Wars spawned a franchise generating billions over decades. Grease 2 was a catastrophic failure. Star Wars dominated cultural memory, while Grease was dismissed as a one-hit wonder. Yet for 1 year, Grease was the biggest film in the world. The miracle that shouldn't have worked. Grease should have been a disaster. Actors too old for their roles. A secret affair threatening filming. Budget fraud. Rating battles. Creative conflicts at every turn. The lead actors weren't supposed to be cast high.